This is life in Jamaica, the island of perfect bodies that seduces tourists. From the first moment you step off the plane and feel the warm air mixed with salt, spices and promises, Jamaica begins to speak to you, not with words, but with rhythms, with bodies, with glances. Here, sensuality is not a whisper, it is a declaration. The beaches are not just landscapes, they are stages. Skin glistens under the sun, not by accident, but as an act of presence. Women with generous, firm, undulating hips walk with a slow stride, aware that each step provokes a reaction. Men with sculpted torsos, muscles defined by work and dance, move to the beat of reggae, as if their bodies spoke a language older than English or patois. In Jamaica, the body is a tool of expression, a calling card, and a form of seduction. But it is not only about aesthetics. Here, body worship is woven into history, into resistance, into blood. From the times of the Maroons, those fugitive slaves who took refuge in the mountains and formed free communities, to the dance hall icons who now dominate the clubs with dizzying moves, the body has been a symbol of pride and power. A strong body is one that survives, one that dances is one that defies, one that seduces is one that commands. And tourists know it. Each year, thousands of visitors disembark on the island drawn by something more than sun and sea. They come searching for something they cannot name, until they find it in the dark eyes of a dancer who sways shamelessly in a Montego Bay bar, in the accidental brush of a snorkel instructor who seems to know exactly what she is doing, in the prolonged massage at a Negril spa, where the air smells of cinnamon and the atmosphere is so thick it could be cut with your fingers. It is as if the whole island of Jamaica whispers a single question. Do you dare to let yourself go? But beneath that intoxicating surface, there are unwritten rules. Because here, desire is celebrated, yes, but also negotiated. Relationships between locals and tourists sometimes begin with a smile and end in tacit agreements. Some come looking for love, others simply a fantasy. Jamaica does not judge, but it does not forget either. In some coastal towns, it is common to hear stories of men who have learned to read tourists like an open book. They know how to detect yearning, boredom disguised as adventure. Know when a woman needs to hear a compliment, and when a man is willing to spend more than necessary for an unforgettable night. They do not offer bodies. They offer experiences, almost like pleasure shamans. Is this a game, a way of life, or an ancient dance disguised as modernity? The answer is in the rhythm. Because if there is something that defines Jamaica, it is movement. Reggae and dancehall are not just music. They are physical expressions of desire, rebellion, connection. Just visit any local club to understand it. In those spaces, women do not dance, they enchant, and men do not conquer, they offer themselves. The choreographies are explicit, yes, but also ritualistic, as if each step, each touch, each turn evoked ancient Afro-Caribbean courtship and domination rites. And yet, everything is wrapped in an atmosphere of respect for the other's energy, because, although it may seem chaotic, there are codes that are honored. Here, consent is non-negotiable, desire is invited, never imposed. But not all visitors understand it. Some cross boundaries. Others get lost in that dangerous mix of attraction and exoticism, believing that what happens on the island has no consequences. And Jamaica, with all its seductive beauty, knows exactly how to return the gaze to those who come to consume without understanding. That is why, in each encounter, there is more than skin. There is history, there is culture, there is an island that has survived centuries of slavery, colonization, and poverty, and that has turned sensuality into a form of resistance. Being desirable here is not an accident, it is an inheritance, and that is what truly seduces. The tourist who understands it takes away more than memories. They carry sweet scars, smiles that are not forgotten, scents that cling to clothing. Those who do not simply leave with a photo, and the uncomfortable feeling that something slipped through their fingers. Because Jamaica does not give itself to just anyone. Jamaica reveals itself only to those who know how to look beyond the tight bikini or the tanned torso, to those who understand that here the body is a temple, yes, but also a trap. And it is precisely that contradiction that makes this island irresistible. Now tell me, if you were on a lonely beach at sunset, with a woman of penetrating gaze dancing before you wearing only a cloth around her waist, would you just watch? Or would you let yourself be drawn into the pulsating heart of Caribbean desire? Because in Jamaica, everything begins with a glance and ends wherever you decide. In Jamaica, beauty is not a rigid canon, but a daily affirmation. It is not about bodies measured by foreign rules, nor proportions dictated by the fashion industry. Here beauty is built with strength, rhythm, and attitude. A woman may not fit European standards of a slender figure, but if she knows how to move to the beat of dancehall, if her waist is firm and her gaze confident, then she is beautiful and everyone knows it. Men are not exempt from this logic. Attractiveness is not simply muscle, but presence. A man who walks with his chest held high, who commands his surroundings with calm gestures and a serene smile, radiates a magnetism that imposes itself beyond the physical. That body worship manifests itself in unexpected places. In the street markets of Kingston, for example, where vendors in floral aprons offer ripe mangoes with a mix of mischief and firmness. While they haggle over prices, they throw compliments, comment on passers-by's clothes, and do so in a playful tone that is not vulgar, but part of the Jamaican soul. Language here is not only spoken, it is corporal, interwoven with music and climate, with a constant energy that pulses on every corner. The beaches, although paradise-like, are not just tourist destinations. They are the stage for a culture that understands desire as something natural, almost spiritual. In areas like Treasure Beach or Frenchman's Cove, it is not uncommon to find locals and visitors sharing bonfires, improvised dances, and conversations that become intimate under the starry sky. What begins as a simple exchange can turn into an intense connection, because Jamaica invites you to live the moment fully, without filters or guilt. On the island, traditions have survived the passage of time and today still retain magnetic force. For example, there are Rastafari communities where rituals of the body, diet, and sexuality are directly linked to deep spirituality. In these spaces, sensuality is not seen as sin but as a divine channel. Sexual encounters are understood as exchanges of sacred energy, where the body becomes a bridge between the human and the eternal. For those arriving from societies where desire is repressed or hidden, these experiences can be transformative, even disconcerting, and not everything is visible at first glance. In the most rural corners of the island, there are stories of wise women who brew potions with roots, honey, and rum, infections meant to awaken desire or cement fidelity. It is said that some of these concoctions are passed down through generations of women who have mastered the art of attraction without words. These practices, although not officially recognized, are as rooted as the sound of the drum or the smoke of jerk. They are part of that other Jamaica, the one that does not appear in travel brochures, but that you feel in every prolonged glance and in every gesture charged with intention. Relationships between locals and foreigners, although they may start from physical attraction, often become tangled with more complex dynamics. Some tourists arrive expecting easy pleasure without consequences, but those who live on the island have their own rules. Love, desire, and economic exchange are not separate concepts. In certain cases, a relationship with a visitor can mean a concrete improvement in quality of life, and this is neither hidden nor disguised. Intentions are clear. The honesty with which these situations are handled surprises more than one outsider accustomed to seduction games disguised as romance. The phenomenon of rent-a-dreads, local men who offer company to foreign women in exchange for attention, gifts, or even money, is no secret. It is a visible dynamic in areas like Ocho Rios and Negril. Some see it as a form of sexual tourism in disguise, others as a form of empowerment. But the truth is that in many cases there is consent, negotiation, and sometimes genuine affection. The line between true desire and economic convenience is thin, yes, but no less real than anywhere else in the world. Over the years, many European and North American women have returned again and again to Jamaica, not only for the climate or scenery, but for the human connections they have formed. Some even have abandoned their previous lives to stay on the island, starting stable relationships with local partners. The island, with its emotional and physical intensity, has that effect on certain hearts. It sweeps them away, disarms them, and rebuilds them with a new rhythm. Not everything is rosy, of course. Attraction can also generate conflict, jealousy, and misunderstandings. The border between what is authentic and what is interested, between the passionate and the strategic, is not always clear. However, this does not detract from the value of the experiences. Jamaica does not present itself as a perfect paradise, but as a real land, where passion coexists with necessity, where desire can be both liberation and strategy. That is why, on this island, every story is unique. What for a tourist is an unforgettable anecdote, for a local may be just another night under the moon. But that does not mean there is no truth in the encounter. There are brief, intense truths, as fleeting as a Caribbean sunrise, but that mark memory forever. Jamaica does not need to promise perfect bodies or forbidden experiences. Its true power lies in how it awakens what many carry asleep: instinct, curiosity, guilt-free desire. Here, sensuality is not a spectacle, it is a way of life. And whoever dares to let themselves be enveloped by its energy never looks at the world the same way again. Jamaica is not only rhythm, skin, and sea breeze, it is also an island of complex social codes where sensuality intertwines with a solid yet flexible cultural structure. To truly understand this country's magnetism, one must look beyond tourist beaches and delve into how bonds are formed between people, especially regarding courtship, relationships, and desire. Because in Jamaica, falling in love is not a process of predictable steps, it is a game of signals, body language, and subtle tensions that can suddenly transform into something intensely physical. Jamaican flirting is not discreet or shy. It is instead direct, vibrant, even theatrical. A sustained glance in the Coronation Market can trigger a whole choreography of gestures, a knowing smile, a nod, a phrase in patois mixing mischief and challenge. It is an unwritten art, but deeply rooted. Here, the body speaks fluently, without need for translations. A walk becomes insinuation. A shared dance is a tacit invitation. A touch on the dance floor, however brief, can hold the promise of a night that needs no words. And it is in the nightclubs where this energy reaches its peak. In places like Fiction or the Deck in Kingston, or at the street festivals of Montego Bay, the night transforms into a temple of desire. Lights blur through smoke and laughter, and the bass of dancehall music makes the floor tremble like a heart beating wildly. Here, women move their hips with calculated precision, aware that their movement hypnotizes. They do not dance to please, they dance to demonstrate power. And men respond, attentive to every impulse, knowing that one misstep can leave them out of the game. There are no explicit rules, but everyone knows the language. In this ecosystem of desire, the physical is only part of the magnetism. Voice, gaze, humor, all count. Jamaica does not seduce with flowers or sweet promises. It does so with intensity, with a raw sincerity that can bewilder outsiders. Here, if someone desires you, you will know it. There will be no beating around the bush. And if you are rejected, they will leave you no doubt. It is not rudeness, but clarity. In a land where time is lived to the fullest, there is no room for lukewarm feelings. But not all encounters are the result of chance. There are events and rituals where desire is openly celebrated. One of the most striking is the Dream Weekend Festival, which during summer turns Negril into a hotbed of bronzed bodies, minimal clothing, and constant music. There, for days, thousands of people dance, drink, and cross paths in a kind of collective trance. What happens on those nights often stays on the island, but those who lived it seldom forget. In that shared desire setting, everything seems allowed, though within a tacit code of respect and consent. Because Jamaica can be intense, but it also demands that its rules be understood. And if tourism finds its most hedonistic apex in events like that, there are also quieter faces of island seduction. In rural areas, attraction manifests in subtler details: a man singing while harvesting, a woman drawing water from the river with enviable balance, the deliberate slowness with which someone lights a cigarette. In those everyday actions there is an aesthetic of desire that does not need to be displayed to be effective. It is an eroticism born of calm presence, the connection between the physical and the elemental. For many tourists, especially Europeans and North Americans, this naturalness with which desire is lived is a cultural shock. They came seeking sun and find something else, a mirror showing them what they have repressed. Bodily freedom, absence of taboos, direct connection between pleasure and environment confront them with their own limitations. Some let themselves go, exploring experiences they never imagined. Others, on the contrary, feel threatened, uncomfortable. But even in them, Jamaica leaves a mark. Romantic or sensual tourism has flourished as a silent but constant current. Unofficial travel agencies offer packages that, without saying so openly, offer more than relaxation. There are tours where travelers are introduced to local culture by guides who not only explain the island's history but also act as bridges to the social codes of desire. Some of these guides become companions, confidants, and in certain cases, lovers. It is a practice that, although unregulated, has become part of the Jamaican experience for many. All this generates a particular dynamic. The island seems to play an active role in awakening visitors' senses. No matter how many photos you have seen or how many reviews you have read, Jamaica cannot be understood with sight but with skin. You have to feel it, breathe its heavy humidity, hear its silence among the mountains, and let yourself be guided by its invisible pulses, those discovered only when one allows oneself to flow with the environment. In this geography of bodies, music, and glances, bonds are as fleeting as they are deep. One intense night can be more revealing than a month of conversations. One dance more intimate than 1,000 messages, because Jamaica does not measure love or desire by conventional parameters. Here the heart beats to a different rhythm, and whoever listens, even if only once, can hardly return to their previous world without feeling that something changed forever. Beyond the golden surface of its beaches and the undeniable magnetism of the bodies that inhabit them, Jamaica preserves an ancestral memory that permeates its social practices and shapes a culture where desire is neither taboo nor demonized, but integrated into rituals, beliefs, and daily customs. To understand that unique energy that runs through the island, one must descend into its roots, into the myths and rites that connect Jamaicans with their African ancestors, with the gods of rhythm, with the spirits of forest and sea. Here, eroticism is not only a physical expression, but also a spiritual one. And at the center of that sensual spirituality stands the figure of Obeah. Obeah, more than a practice, is a worldview. Ancient, mysterious, alive in the island's deepest corners. It is an esoteric tradition inherited from West Africa, a form of magic mixing prayers, herbs, curses, and enchantments, still invoked in secret by those seeking protection, love, power, or justice. Although officially outlawed, Obeah continues breathing in hushed whispers, in humble neighborhood homes, on rural road edges, in markets where vendors offer not only fruit but also roots, oils, and talismans with purposes few dare name. One of Obeah's most intriguing aspects is its relationship with desire. There are formulas and spells dedicated to attracting lovers, winning back ex-partners, or sowing a fiery bond between two people. In this island, love can be induced with special baths of flowers and essences or through ragdolls representing the desired person. Some women prepare mixtures with secret ingredients applied to the body to become irresistible. And there are men who seek help to overcome shyness or become true sexual magnets. Although science denies it, some swear they felt their emotions change inexplicably after being touched by these rituals. Beyond the mystery, Obeah reveals a deep truth about Jamaican culture. Here, passion is not repressed. It is channeled. It is transformed. It is ritualized. Even jealousy, possession, or fear of abandonment have found in this tradition a structured yet fear-filled form of expression. Because if obeya can make someone love you, it can also ruin the unfaithful. Stories of revenge, evil eye, bodies falling ill for loving the wrong person are told seriously among neighbors, and although many deny it publicly, in private they confess having consulted a practitioner at least once. Aside from these hidden rites, there are more visible, celebrated expressions of this cultural sensuality. Traditional dances, for example, are authentic narrations of the body in motion. The dinky mini, once associated with funerals, mixes vitality with farewell in intense gestures between men and women. Its rhythm is hypnotic, and its movements, though symbolic, conceal vibrant eroticism. In rural areas, these dances are still performed on special occasions, with elders watching nostalgically and youth imitating boldly. In coastal cities, popular festivals are also stages where the body is celebrated. During Reggae Sumfest, the streets fill with dancers unafraid of provocation. There is no shame, no censorship. Here, moving to bashment rhythm is an act of freedom. And although some tourists watch in astonishment, and others with poorly hidden desire, for Jamaicans it is a way to reaffirm identity. In those wild movements, in the sweat running down dark skin, lies a history of resistance and affirmation. Because this island, so often dominated, so often plundered, has learned to find power in what many countries have tried to repress, the enjoyment of the body. On an intimate level, Jamaica presents fascinating contradictions. Although sensuality is part of everyday life, emotional bonds between partners can be more complex. Relationships are lived intensely, but also with a certain autonomy. Fidelity, for example, is not always interpreted as total exclusivity. In some poorer sectors, it is common for men to have multiple simultaneous relationships while women negotiate their power through social and emotional strategies learned over time. The figure of the baby mother, a woman who has had a child with a man, even if they are no longer together, is frequent and does not necessarily imply an emotional breakup, but rather a reconfiguration of affection. This does not mean that romance is absent, on the contrary. In Jamaica, falling in love is a rapturous experience. There are improvised serenades with guitar in street corners, handwritten letters, promises that sound more like eternal oaths. But there is also realism. Here it is understood that love can last one night or a lifetime, and that both paths are valid as long as they are lived with authenticity. In this balance between ritual and street, between music and silence, Jamaica has achieved something unique, turning desire into a culturally respected force. Neither demonized nor glorified, eroticism flows like a warm river, nourishing human relationships without crushing the spirituality living in every gesture. It is a land where bodies meet without fear, and where secrets, even the darkest, are accepted as part of shared history. Each encounter, each dance, each nocturnal whisper is part of a story that began centuries ago and continues writing itself under the Caribbean sun. When one thinks of Jamaica, the first images are often reggae, bright beaches, and bodies moving to the wind and music. But behind that hedonistic, colourful postcard lies another Jamaica, less known, more profound. An island that preserves hidden lineages, ancient beliefs, and cultural practices that still whisper in the curious visitor's ear. Because here, in the middle of the Caribbean Sea, sensual and spiritual intertwine in unexpected ways. The most seductive Jamaica is not always the one shown under the sun, but the one hidden in the shade of its mountains, in the murmur of trees, and in the slow gestures of its people. One of the most surprising aspects of this land is the coexistence between tourist modernity and a rurality seemingly suspended in time. While all-inclusive hotels rise in Montego Bay or Negril serving pleasure on a silver platter, inland villages maintain human relationships marked by ancestral norms. In these towns, courtship remains a ceremony. There are no apps, no spontaneous dates. Men must prove their interest with deeds, bringing gifts, helping with harvest, participating in family celebrations. Desire is expressed with symbolic gestures, with respect for community codes. And it is there, away from the hustle, that love acquires a purer yet more controlled form. In some rural regions, matchmaking practices still survive with surprising intensity. Premarital rituals exist in which families exchange objects blessed by village elders. Some elders recount how decades ago newlyweds had to spend a whole night together in the same room, but without touching, only to see if they could resist temptation. If they succeeded, their bond was considered strong. This test, inherited from times when temperance was a sacred virtue, carried both sexual and spiritual connotations. It was contained desire that measured the authenticity of the feeling. Another deeply rooted element of Jamaican culture is the cult of the body as a reflection of health, strength, and attractiveness. But it is not limited to visual aesthetics. In certain communities, diet has a clearly sensual component. It is believed that some foods increase virility or personal magnetism. Cassava root, ackee with saltfish, local herbal infusions like morbi or sarsaparilla, all are considered natural aphrodisiacs. Recipes passed down by grandmothers exist to strengthen a man's body or ignite a woman's fire. It is not witchcraft, but ancestral wisdom based on the connection between body and earth. The omnipresent, majestic sea also plays its role in desire codes. In Jamaica, swimming together at sunset is much more than recreation. For many couples, it signifies a symbolic cleansing. It is believed that salt water dissolves bad energies, jealousy, third-party influences. Many Jamaicans say their first love confessions happened floating in silence while the sea lulled them. And even today, some, in moments of romantic crisis, immerse themselves alone to ask the ocean for advice. In parallel, music remains one of the main vehicles of eroticism on the island. We have spoken of reggae, but there is another, even more provocative genre, dancehall. Born in marginalized neighborhoods, this musical style is more direct, raw, loaded with sexual references and double entendres. Dancehall dance floors become stages of bodily freedom. Men and women dance in total contact without shame, without guilt. What for some tourists is a scandalous show, for Jamaicans is simply the affirmation of bodily identity. There is no repression, there is no sin, only bodies that speak what words often silence. But perhaps one of the most striking phenomena today is the covert erotic tourism occurring in certain island areas. Although not openly discussed, there are places where young men, many with well-trained physiques and charismatic personalities, interact with much older foreign women. The exchange is not explicitly commercial, but the subtext is clear. They offer attention, youth. They receive gifts, meals, companionship. It is not prostitution in the traditional sense, but neither is it naive love. It is a dance between need and desire, a symbiosis that, although criticized by conservative sectors, has become part of the informal economy in certain coastal areas. All this happens while everyday life goes on. Children running barefoot down the street, vendors offering sweet mangoes under a blazing sun, families singing together in church on Sunday morning. Jamaica is not a static postcard, it is a whirlwind of contradictions. It is faith and sensuality, humility and arrogance, deep spirituality and unfiltered desire. And precisely in that duality lies its seductive